As Barb mentioned, my name is Ben Souchek, and my company is Home Downsizing Solutions. We specialize in dealing with the real estate more so than anything, but years ago, I learned that we needed to start providing additional services to deal with stuff, because that's usually the first thing that I hear from people is, I'd like to move, but I have no idea what to do with my stuff. So a little background, I started what was or what is the Sierra Group home buyers literally 27 years ago, and have been doing business in Lincoln and Omaha since then. I do have a real estate license. I don't act as an agent, but I do have a license, and that allows me to provide different services or different solutions depending on what a person needs when they are looking at selling a house and downsizing. And really, for the first 10 years, I didn't necessarily know why people would sell their house to me as a home buyer versus just listing a house with a real estate agent in a traditional manner. But does anybody remember what happened in 2008? Yeah. Okay. Everything collapsed. Economy, the housing market, real estate market, a lot of things went downhill. And it was in those years, those few years afterwards, when I started getting more calls from individuals that had owned their house for a long time, that they maybe had tried to sell their house once or twice, especially if the house needed some updates or repairs, situations where maybe they didn't have a perfect house for sale, and even if they did, they still were looking for a solution from me. And it was in those times that they taught me the benefits to being able to buy a house that needed repairs, updates, that needed stuff taken care of, and all those issues. So that's when I created Home Downsizing Solutions, to better serve the individuals that had been calling me. So as far as downsizing, my presentation won't be very long this afternoon, but I want to touch on the high points that I think are of importance, and then I will certainly take questions after my presentation as well as after your meeting, so that I can address more of your specific questions that you would like to learn about. The first item, I guess, that I usually ask about, or ask a person when they say, well, what do I need to do to downsize my house, is what is your goal with downsizing? Do you have a time issue? Do you just want less stuff around the house? Are you already planning to move to another community or another living arrangement? Do you just want to get rid of some of your stuff so that your kids don't have to? That was, and especially if you only have one child, or adult child, that might be putting a lot on one person. When my mom passed away about 1.5 years ago, I'm one of 6 siblings. And so we had a few more people to assist with going through my mom's things because I won't ask if anybody can relate to this, but she kept everything. So we had things to go through, and obviously it's very difficult if you're the one and it's your stuff. You have more freedom to discard things than an adult child, I think, that may feel guilty about doing that. And since I purchased my mom's farm, my family farm, years ago, a lot of those items that nobody else wanted ended up with me and my family on our farm, because I felt a responsibility to keep those things. Again, the first thing is, what is the goal that you have in mind, or that you want to address? Why are you doing it? Why are you downsizing? The other thing to keep in mind from an early standpoint is, if you are looking at moving, do you know where you're going to go to? Is it going to be a smaller house? Is it going to be an apartment or apartment community? Generally, of course, the term downsizing would indicate you're going to some type of smaller space. And so a lot of times we run into people that just cannot take the things that they want to take. Whether they want to take all the things or not, or even if they know that they don't want to take some things, the things that they do want to take is just not going to fit into where they want to move into. And so there are companies out there, and there's software online, if you're like using a computer and are very fluent doing that, to make floor plans of where you want to go to. And some of the communities, I believe, even have their own assistants, either online or otherwise, to help with making a floor plan so that you can go through the things that you want to take from your house and will know up front whether they're going to fit or not. So making a floor plan can sometimes alleviate some of those concerns as well. The other thing that I usually talk about in my book and otherwise is, I guess there's really only 2 or 3 different methods, I guess I would say, in regards to downsizing that people talk about. And one is to start in rooms that aren't used or aren't used very often, and go one by one item and mark things or put things in piles of things that you definitely want to keep, things that you definitely know you don't want to keep, and although it's discouraged by most people, a maybe pile. So, because of course that ends up usually going with you all the time. That is a start anyway. And so especially if you're not under a time crunch, that might be the best way to start, is to at least do something to make a dent in things and to at least address some things that you know you do or do not want to keep. The other thing that I have done, again, going back to memories, going back to pictures, maybe you have pictures of family pictures from your parents, your grandparents. I know in my case, we have pictures that are over 100 years old. Recipes, that was a big thing. So even though my mom was German, my grandmother was Czech, and she learned how to cook Czech when I was growing up, or she always did when I was growing up. And so she has a lot of recipes that my family want to keep, but how do you know, what's the best way of keeping those without just putting them in a box and putting them on a shelf and then we're never going to see them again, which is actually right where they are now. And so what I've worked at doing is setting up a online Google Drive, which there's different applications, different computer applications that you can set up an online storage. And I have scanned in a lot of those items as well as our family history. And then I can share that with my siblings or other relatives so that we don't lose that. One thing that I thought about doing several years ago was also recording my mom and asked her a lot of questions from the time she was growing up till shortly before she passed away. And so those digital recordings of her voice are going to be kept. And I hope that's important to my kids and our other relatives. But you can also put, pictures, recipes, all the other items digitally so that if something happens to those originals, you're not going to lose those. And I think that's very important from a family standpoint. The other resource that is good if you are just lost in or overwhelmed in not knowing where to start there are senior move managers and organizers that is their job. That's what they do for a living, so to speak. And so just know that there are resources out there if you're overwhelmed to be able to utilize them to at least get started. So when you have things that you know that you don't want any longer, there really are only a few options available to you to deal with those items. Of course, give to family or friends, garage sales, or estate sales or auctions, or donate items to charity. With all of these things, and maybe you've already experienced this, it seems like younger generations maybe don't necessarily appreciate or want a lot of the stuff or things that you have. that maybe you feel would have been important, or maybe you got from your parents or grandparents. And I think that's just, well, that's reality. Many things that we think are of value, other people may not. Or they might think they have value one way or the other, but they just have no room for them. With estate sales or garage sales, estate sales, there are certainly companies that do garage estate sales. They'll come into your house and organize things for you, have online auctions or in-person auctions. Most of the companies, though, want at least $10,000 to $15,000 of good stuff before they will come in and have a sale. Because most of the companies, from my knowledge, will take 20 to 30% or so of the gross. And so if it's not worth enough for them to provide those services, they're going to probably decline doing those types of sales. So just know that there's kind of a limit, especially if you've given a number of the good stuff away to your family or friends, then of course they will come out and look at your items for free, but just be aware of that. And so with garage sales, in my opinion, again, you have to have, I guess, good stuff if you want to go through that, itemize things, advertise the garage sale, and then sit there while you're having the garage sale to make sure nothing else disappears. The big thought in my mind these days is security and safety. Do you want to advertise items and then invite who knows who to your house just to make what might be only a few bucks? So it's something to consider, or I would encourage at least thinking about that before you just decide to have a garage sale and do that. What I would term the challenges with donating things to charity is, it's been our experience if we buy a house and the sellers have taken all the stuff that they want, but they want us to try and donate some items to their charity of choice or a favorite charity. A lot of charities don't want used stuff anymore. And I don't know if it's from a liability standpoint or other standpoint, but it's very difficult in a lot of cases to actually donate things to charities. I think it's a lot better to deal with the stuff you have in your present house before you transition to a new apartment or home, versus what I have seen many times is a person doesn't know what they want to do and they can't let go of it, and so they get a storage unit and they pay for transporting it from their house to a storage unit, and then pay for storage where it's going to sit for who knows how long, and they never will do anything with it, most likely. One of the items I was asked to talk about is hoarding situations. And in our company's case, I've dealt with hoarding situations numerous times. In most of our cases anyway, it hasn't been a good situation at all. And not just the fact that a person has a lot of stuff around, but in many cases that we've worked with, they've been situations where it's really not safe or healthy for the homeowner to be in the house. Not to get too graphic, but they've had pets they've had pets. There's been situations where it was pretty clear that a person went through a drive-through for food and the packages never made it outside the house. So it's been a very difficult situation to deal with, and not a good situation at all for the person living there. I don't know, there certainly isn't a blanket statement that I can provide on if you know of anyone that may be living in a circumstance like that, because everyone is different. I'm certainly not mental health expert in any way, shape, or mind. Just ask my wife. So it's a very challenging situation of what to deal with. But there are agencies that can help. I do know of that. And so if you do have someone in that circumstance, certainly try and get them the help that they need. One thing that I forgot to mention too in regards to going through a house and dealing with stuff when a person has more things than they need, or especially if the kids think someone has more things than they need. My wife is pretty good at this. What she would do is start in a room like the kitchen, and like in my mom's case, or she's told me she's done this several times, she would make the homeowner sit in a chair, and she would go through the cupboards or go through whatever, and she'd pick one item up and say, when have you used this last? And if it was more than a year, she would put it in a box and set it aside. And so she was pretty lethal with being able to downsize and really make people think, or make the homeowner, like my mom, think, okay, I guess I really don't need that anymore. That's one item too. If you have a good friend, family member, and they can play that role, that might be a good thing as well. So the last thing I'd like to wrap up with, and then I'd be happy to answer questions, whether it's now or after your meeting, is just a little bit more about my company. Again, a lot of people wonder why, a lot of real estate agents wonder why, and I am an agent as myself, but they wonder why people would sell to a company that buys houses. And what I tell anybody is that the people that sell to my company find value in the benefits that I provide. Those primary benefits being, if a person has a house that needs repairs or updates, we don't care. What we tell people with their stuff is, take the things you want to take. We'll help you sell the things you want to sell, or bring in an organizer to help you organize those things. And whatever's left, we take care of it. We do not do any appraisals or whole house inspections. And we can usually close, but allow a person to stay in a house for 60, 90, maybe more days until they transition to their new home or apartment. And so it's a convenience issue more than anything else. Again, if that's not correct, if that's not the right solution, then we'll work with some great agents, or we'll help find a great agent, possibly like this lady here, that can provide a traditional real estate solution. Thank you very much for listening.